Okay. Oh, it's kind of charged. That's nice. It'll probably die on me. And I don't know how I feel with it going while I do this, because it's a glare, I'm pretty sure, but what are you gonna do? So there has been like an influx of K-pop related videos on YouTube. I can't really give you an answer as to why, other than I guess because K-pop as a music genre has kind of risen to the forefront since like 2012 when Gangnam Style came out until like now, with BTS taking over Western media, it seems like, for better or for worse, with a like Beatle-esque mania that is surrounding them right now. With that being said, I feel like there's a lot of confusion that comes with K-pop as a musical genre, mostly because it's just so not what Westerners are used to. And I can only do this video from the Western standpoint since I am an American citizen. I'm not Korean, I'm not from any other country, so all I can really give you is the American-centric perspective of K-pop music. Trite, I know. Sorry. But like I said, there can be like a lot of confusion because K-pop is wildly different than what most foreigners are used to. And because of that, I think it would be a good idea for these types of videos kind of, I don't want to say deconstructing K-pop so much so as exploring K-pop as not only a musical genre, but also as a business and an industry, because that is what it is. And we can kind of go through how K-pop connects with the cultural aspects of Korea as a country, and the history behind K-pop, and the politics that also surround K-pop music as well, because politics do surround K-pop music, believe it or not. So yeah, and I thought what better way to do it than to sit down and haphazardly do my makeup, because I don't know, it just feels more homey that way. It feels more like I'm talking to an old friend than it does me just talking to camera while I'm doing my makeup. And if the lighting shifts in and out, it's because I don't have a ring light, because I'm poor and I'm using the natural sunlight from my window right now. So if I keep looking this way, it's because I'm just watching the sun playing hide and seek with me constantly. So that's great. Alright, on to the video. So I've already done my eyebrows off camera, not because I'm ashamed of my eyebrows, just because I talk a lot and I do my makeup very slowly, so I know this video is going to be very long, and so if I can cut down on that time, I will. But for now, I'm going to go in with foundation. This is the Estee Lauder Double Wear Cushion Radiant Makeup Stick thing, whatever. It's foundation. I put it on. I got it for prom last year. It was super expensive, and I never put on foundation, but why not? So, K-pop, capitalism. What about it? Well, most of the times, when people first watch a music video by any K-pop idol group, their first, reaction to it is the production value of that video. They're like, wow, it's so high quality, there's so many sets, there's so many special effects, there's just a lot going on. Admittedly so, there is indeed a lot going on. And K-pop idols themselves are kind of seen as these larger than life figures, hence the idea of them being idols. But they're seen as these perfect, just packaged products rather than actual artists and musicians. And so because of that, you kind of get this disingenuous feel to K-pop music when you're first starting out and you're first watching it and getting into it as a music genre. you kind of see K-pop as a more manufactured, robotic genre of music that I think Westerners aren't very comfortable with, mostly because we pride ourselves on the idea of authenticity, and K-pop can sometimes feel very inauthentic, mostly because, I don't want to say it's made to be that way, I want to say it feels inauthentic because there's so much production value and because everything's very pretty and pristine. And so because of that, people see K-pop music as more of a, business than they do the actual artistry. And so because of that, people tend to see K-pop music through a very capitalistic lens. They kind of see it as a cash grab. They kind of see it as these idols don't have any autonomy or any say into the music that they produce and the things that they wear and the lyrics that they write and everything else. You kind of get the feeling that those songs are just made to make money, and everything around K-pop is just carefully crafted in order to make this well-rounded image that will allow them to sell their product to the largest market possible in order to turn the largest profit possible. And I think people kind of get the whole capitalistic feeling of K-pop from the idea of the whole idol training lifestyle and taking these young kids and making them, train for hours on end, from anything from, vocal training to dance lessons to dieting and everything else. And, it kind of feels very slimy in a way. And I feel like in order to understand how all that came to be, of how modern K-pop came to be, we kind of have to go back, and I mean like way, way back into history, before K-pop even as a genre was created. Alright, and with that said, I finished my foundation. I'm gonna go in with my concealer. So like I said, we have to go way, 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 way back into history, all the way back to 1963. And what is important about 1963 is this is when Park Chung-hee is the newly elected, I want to say he was elected, I don't know if he was elected, I probably should have looked that up, but I'm not gonna because we're already making this video. Let's just say he's the new South Korean leader, right? And you don't really need to know much about Park Chung-hee as a leader to understand what comes next in the rest of this video. What I will say is that you should probably look him up because he's just interesting as a general political figure. Fun fact, his daughter was the first South Korean female president. When was she impeached? Yeah, because she was impeached. I can't remember when she was impeached, but she was impeached quite recently, mostly because she may or may not have given money to a cult. So, that's something. Moving on, what you really need to know about Park Chung-hee as a political leader is that at the time when he was in power, the government was very much so involved in the types of media that the Korean public was able to see. So, with that said, the South Korean government censored a lot of the types of media that was given to South Koreans. It was either very Korean-centric, very patriotic, almost to the point of propaganda, or it was very G-rated. There weren't very many controversial topics being discussed in it. It's kind of semblant of Victorian era art forms, when the powers that be that were in charge at the time felt as if all art should have a moral or a very moral high ground or a religious aspect to it. That's kind of what it was like back in 1963. Even after Park Chung-hee died, because he was assassinated in office in 1979, even after his assassination, the media had a very large role in what South Koreans did and did not see in their everyday lives when it came to newspapers and broadcast, when it came to like newspapers and broadcasting agencies, the whole nine. So that form of, you know, censorship lasted for a while in South Korea. It lasted all the way through the 1960s up until like the 90s. So you had like Korean 80s pop songs that were very upbeat and catchy, and they were almost certainly talking about how you should be an upright citizen of Korea. Should I use banana powder? We're gonna try. Ooh, girl. Ooh, girl. So, 80s pop songs, either patriotic or they were very G-rated, like I said, very, you know, non-controversial, very much so, oh, I'm gonna hold this girl's hand while we go on a date and all we're gonna do is hold hands. Nothing else, just holding hands, okay? We're not wandering anywhere. Just hand holding. And so that's what South Koreans had to choose from within their borders when it came to television, when it came to music, when it came to newspapers, the whole everything, right? And an important fact to know about these broadcasting agencies is that they were very much so in control of these artists. Sound kind of recognizable? They were very much so in control of these artists. They were very much so in control of what they could and could not sing on live television because, of course, the Korean government was still, you know, breathing heavily down their necks. And so they had to go by the book. And so those artists didn't really have much agency to their art. Now we're going to move on a little bit forward in history. We're going to get to the 90s now. Well, like the late 80s, early 90s. And this was during the time where like the personal computer, the World Wide Web was making, you know, their impact on the globe. And so Koreans had access to more media that wasn't just what was on their TV. You know, they could see things that were from America, or they could see things that were from Europe and the such. And so they had access to different forms of music, different forms of news, different forms of style, different forms of fashion, you know, just different forms of different cultures. So because of this, Koreans had a little bit more to choose from when it came to if you had a computer or not. If you didn't have a computer, you didn't have much to choose from other than what Korea was giving you inside of your borders. I feel like collectively people are screaming at me while I'm doing this. I know I'm messing up. You know I'm messing up. You know, that's just the fun of it all. And that was the way it was for some until 1992. Now, this is my favorite part, mostly because, you know, I like music and I like you know, people that push the status quo. And to be honest with you, this person is just kind of hot. Like, he's so I personally enjoy this group that I'm going to talk about next. You too should probably enjoy this group because they are literally the reason you have K-pop music. Like, no joke, they literally help to form K-pop music. Like, without them, you wouldn't have the genre. Oh my god, the lighting is just... Girl, you know, it would be cute if I could do it right there, but there's nothing cute over there other than my Chris Evans cutout. But you know that? It's too soon. It's too soon to expose you to that much. We'll get there. So, now that I got that out of the way, the year is 1992. 3 young men get up on stage to perform on a popular music competition show at the time. They get up, they perform, you know, having a rousing good time, and the general consensus after they're done is just a look of confusion and fear. They're dressed in baggy pants, they're busting out dance moves, they're jumping up and down, they're very energetic, and they're just having a good old time. They're rapping, you know, they're not just singing love songs. And after they're done performing, they get pretty low marks. Understandably so. Because the general populace of South Korea, while they may have access to the internet, had never seen what those 3 boys were doing on stage within their own borders with people that looked like them before. So they were obviously very surprised and very confused and very disoriented. And we tend to not really like things that we aren't comfortable with or things that we have not seen before. That's just human nature. So you would think that their story begins and ends there, that the group would fade off into obscurity, but that's not at all what happens, because while the general populace of South Korea at the time is very confused and they weren't very welcoming to the idea of this group bursting onto the scene, there was another segment of South Korea that was absolutely just in love with the idea of these 3 boys. And that segment of South Korea was the younger generation. And that group that performed that fateful day in 1992 was Sotaji and the Boys. So a little background on Sotaji and the Boys and how they came to be. So Sotaji himself was a part of a heavy metal band that had broken up. And he got into Western hip-hop culture and rap music and the like. And so he decided he wanted to try his hand, you know, at creating that type of music. You know, he was inspired by it. So he met up with like 2 other people. He was like, yo, I'm gonna start a band, you wanna be a part of it? And they were like, got nothing else better to do, so sure. So that is how we get to the point of 1992 with them being on the music competition show. So let's talk about life post 1992. So the younger generation had latched on to Sotaji and the Boys. They loved their music, not only just because of the new and refreshing kind of style and charisma they brought to Korean media, but also because of the messages that were within Sotaji and the Boys' music. They were talking about some pretty controversial and polarizing subjects, like Their lyrics were very boundary pushing, especially for the time frame that they were, you know, performing in. They criticized everything from the educational system to the Korean government to the societal pressures that were placed upon the youth. So the youth finally felt as if they had a mouthpiece that was willing to vocalize the concerns of that group. And because of that, they were very, very attached to Sotaji and the Boys' music. Not only was it because of the lyrics though, it was also because of their ability to mix different genres and make a very unique sound that was distinctly their own. They took inspiration from heavy metal, they took inspiration from hip hop, they took inspiration from Western pop music. They took these genres and they mixed them together to make a style of music that was very unique and was very nice to listen to. Now, don't think that Sotaji and the Boys were exempt from Korean censorship laws just because kids liked them, because that can't be further from the truth. Actually, a lot of their lyrics were censored in their albums, or when they were just, you know, played on broadcasting agencies, of which there weren't very many, or their performances were censored, or they were just banned outright altogether. They were accused of having, you know, satanic messages within their songs that were making the youth go crazy. They just weren't very liked by the older generation, and especially by the Korean government. They weren't really having it. But because of that, because they were being censored, their fans were like not having any of it. So they actually like went out, protested, you know, in the streets. They were like, no, this is not fair. Censorship laws need to change. And because of that racket that they made, they helped to change South Korea's censorship laws. Like, legit helped to change. Like, let's sit down for a second. Fans of a music group, particularly the younger generation, went out into the streets, voiced their frustrations, voiced their concerns, voiced their criticism of their government, and because of that, they helped to change the government itself. If that's not fascinating and interesting and just inspiring, you know, I don't even know why you're still here. I don't even know why you're still watching this, because obviously the point just missed you. So yeah, Sotaji and the Boys single-handedly, well, I won't say single-handedly, Sotaji and the Boys helped to change censorship laws in South Korea. Like, and because of that, they started to have a whole lot of just critical acclaim when it came to their music. People loved them. They loved the message. They loved the style. They loved the attitude, the charisma. They loved everything about those three boys, especially Sotaji himself. He was not afraid to push boundaries. He even wore, like, you know, fashion at the time that many people would be scared to wear now. He wore skirts. He was breaking, I guess you can say, gender boundaries when it came to that. He truly was himself. And because of that, many people gravitated towards it. He was very authentic in his presentation of not only himself, but his music and who he was as an artist. And that is very inspiring. Also, he was kind of cute. You know what? I won't even say kinda. He was very cute. I find him very, very cute. Even today, as a 40-year-old man, literally old enough to be my father. I think he's older than my actual father. You know, if you're ever feeling lonely. I hate myself. Anyways, continuing on. He's inspirational. Besides the fact of him being hot, he's just inspirational as an artist and as a person. So, back to Sotaji and the Boys. Unfortunately, Sotaji and the Boys announced their retirement in 1996 at the height of their fame. They had been a boy band for 4 years before they announced retirement, and that just shot through the heart of so many young fans. So because Sotaji and the Boys left, it kind of, there was a little gap in the market that was just waiting to be filled now that they were gone. And who else better to capitalize on it than one man in particular. So in the summer of 1979, I want to say, it was 1979, Lee Soo-man went on a work trip to America. And while he was there, he saw the MTV craze that was happening at the time. And he had decided that he wanted to try his hand at replicating that same energy, but in his home country of Korea. So Lee Soo-man worked in the radio business at the time. So when he went back to South Korea, he started to, make sure that he had enough connections so that way in the year of 1989, our man was able to create his very own music entertainment business. And while you may not know this man's name, you may not recognize his name, I can assure you, you recognize his company, because Lee Soo-man created and is currently still the CEO of SM Entertainment. Now, if you're keeping up with dates, you would know that Lee Soo-man created SM Entertainment in 1989, but Sotaji and the Boys came out in 1992. So how do these timelines mesh? Well, here's how. So, Lee Soo-man created SM Entertainment in 1989. He had actually signed his first artist. The artist's name, I don't remember. I don't really think it's that important. Just know his first album didn't do well, so Taji and the Boys came out in 1992. So Lee Soo-man kind of formed the second album to replicate that same sound and that same image of Sotaji and the Boys, so that way the second album did significantly a lot better. And then when his third album came out, old dude went to jail for marijuana charges, and the Korean public completely turned against that artist, so SM lost a lot of money that way. So from all of this, Lee Soo-man realized the risk that comes from signing artists and just managing a music company in general. And he wanted to reduce this risk as much as possible. So because of that, he helped to create the in-style, the in-house style of producing and marketing idol groups that we see today in, third generation K-pop idol groups. So this means everyone from your music producer, to your songwriter, to your acting coach, to your vocal coach, to your stylist, to your makeup artist, anyone under the sun that you could think of that you may need in order to produce and market an idol group would all be housed under one roof, that being your entertainment company. So everyone would be on the same payroll, so there would be no need to go out to different people outside of your company in order to get those resources that you may need. It is also how we develop the whole idea of idol trainees and that whole lifestyle, and how K-pop groups are formed today, whether we love it or whether we hate it. Now that is a different video, and whether or not that practice of having these young trainees come in and just low-key kind of sign their lives away for however long these entertainment companies may need them to, you know? I can talk about that later, but for right now, back on track. So, in-house style of production, it caught on like wildfire once other entertainment agencies saw the success of it. These entertainment companies being JYP and YG. Fun fact, Mr. YG himself was a part of none other than Sotaji and the Boys. So, another reason why Sotaji and the Boys is very, very important is because literally one of the big three was a part of the very first K-pop group. Bet you didn't know that. I hope you didn't know that. I hope I taught you something new. Okay, so now that we know the history and the foundation of how we get, you know, second generation and third generation K-pop idol groups, the idol groups that most of us now know and love, how does K-pop connect back to capitalism? Well, I'm glad you made it this far. Hopefully. So, K-pop and capitalism. When Lee Soo-man first started, you know, marketing his new entertainment company, he ran with the ideology of culture as a commodity. And if you don't know what culture as a commodity means, culture as a commodity is defined as using a place's culture or cultural artifacts in order to help support the economy of that given area. The most recognizable form of culture as a commodity would be tourism. And there is a lot of debate on whether or not culture as a commodity is a good or a bad thing. I would say it isn't inherently a bad thing, it just usually kind of turns sour when there is a lack of respect for that culture. But that's a whole separate thing altogether as well. But Lee Soo-man, you know, ran his business with the idea that if you could use K-pop as a part of Korean culture, which it very much so was, down to like the fashion and everything else when it came to the younger generation of South Korea at the time, if he could market K-pop as a part of Korea's culture and as a product, then he could make money not only within Korea but globally as well. And he was right. And there's something to be said about, you know, the music industry as a whole when it comes to culture as a commodity, and especially in terms of the conversation around, you know, hip-hop and rap music that we have nowadays with the protective sort of gatekeeping we have over it. So you could basically say that all forms of music is culture as a commodity. I mean, the way that Sotaji and the Boys was even inspired by Western media was the idea of using Western media and Western pop music and Western hip-hop music as a commodity to be sold. And culture as a commodity in terms of K-pop did work. Even let's go all the way back to 1996 when Sotaji and the Boys announced their retirement. The South Korean economy was doing pretty well for itself globally. And it was pretty stagnant for years beforehand, and then they saw a very slow but steady increase, and then it took a very sharp increase in the right direction. And then we get to the year, I want to say 2003? I want to say, and that's when K-pop was doing pretty well for itself as well. It was pretty self-sustaining. We had the big three show up on the scene. K-pop as a genre wasn't just, oh, you mean Sotaji and the Boys? No, you mean like TVXQ and a few other groups. And so the South Korean government actually looked towards these entertainment agencies at the time because the South Korean economy started to take a tumble, and they were like, yo, we need your help, because the South Korean government also realized the impact and the importance that using culture as a commodity can have on a country's economic stability. And so K-pop became one of Korea's exports, and it did very, very well for itself, as we can see today. And because of this whole history of, you know, the broadcasting agencies having very direct control over what these artists made and their songs that they produced and the things that they sang on television, to the kind of anarchist overturning of that with Sotaji and the Boys, and then with it kind of slowly turning back to that era of broadcasting agencies being able to control these artists, with the advent of the big three and entertainment companies, with the idea of culture as a commodity and everything else, you can kind of see how capitalism is ingrained into modern K-pop music now. Of course, there is still more to be said about the way that idols are treated, and the way that they are treated more as, you know, larger than life figures than they are as actual people. And I think in Western media, even we still have a long ways to go with the way that we treat our celebrities and our artists. I don't feel like any country is exactly exempt from that line of thinking. I feel like it's just something that comes along with the culture of celebrity, and that's just a larger overarching issue and topic that can be discussed. But because, you know, it's easier to do it in a much narrower aspect, and because I feel like we are always more inclined to call out other countries' ills rather than we are to call out our own, you know, the video is geared towards K-pop. So K-pop has been capitalistic almost because they kind of had to be. And I just think it's very interesting and fascinating to think about it from when we had Sotaji and the Boys, who were very much so about taking on these controversial issues at the time and being very, you know, pulling themselves up by their bootstraps and very grassroots. Basically very punk rock and metal to what we think about now with the EXOs and the Twices and the Blackpinks and the Red Velvets and the BTSs and all the rest of them. You know, it's a very jagged kind of shift from Sotaji and the Boys from 1992 till 2018. You know, I'm just kind of really fascinated by whether or not the shift is going to come back soon, because a lot of these idols are indeed making their own music. I know Twice makes some of their own songs. I know for sure BTS does theirs. I want to say GOT7's leader, who was going to JYP and showing him the music he made. So it's gotten better. But there still is something to be said about the way that these K-pop idols are marketed. So while there are, you know, there is improvement, there is still always more room for improvement. But yeah, that's what I have to say about K-pop and capitalism. I'm just gonna go in and finish up my makeup. I put some glitter, just a shimmery shade, underneath my eyelid along with the black. The glitter primer I have is from NYX. I didn't use it because it makes me break out around my eyelids, and that's not cute. So I'm gonna put on my eyeliner. This is the NYX Epic Ink Liner Pencil. So I have very different eye shapes, which makes everything very difficult. My eyeliner is never even. I'm gonna go in with this black and tightline my eyes. Alright. I'm gonna put on some mascara. This is the Voluminous Lash Paradise. on out as much as we can. Go back in probably with some more glitter because we're just those types of people. I'm gonna whip out this Colourpop silver liner. I'm gonna do this thing that I saw Kenny JD doing. She doesn't know what she calls it, but I like the idea of the shooting star brow, so that's what I'm gonna call it. A little bit thicker. Alright. I wonder if that even shows up. Good enough. So you guys, this is my finished look. Don't look too closely, it's not that good. So if you guys want to see more of these types of videos, if you guys are interested in more of these types of videos, I'm always happy to do them. I think I might just do them even if you guys don't want me to, because I enjoy doing them and I like doing them. And I hope I don't have lipstick on my teeth, because that would be real embarrassing. Anyways, bye!